The 2021 NFL draft class might go down as one of the greatest quarterback draft classes that we've ever seen in NFL history. With the amount of talent that we saw in the NFL draft this year and the amount of hype that all these players generated, each and every one of these players that I've been evaluating so far, at least in my opinion, would have been a top 5 pick in any other NFL draft. That's how deep this year's QB class was. But I don't think there's a single player that's been more polarizing thus far than Justin Fields. And I'm going to break him down a little bit in terms of how he's doing in OTAs. We have mini camp next week, so there's so much more information about the guy. But this is a player that I have taken a special interest in. So today I'm going to be bringing you guys an update as to how he's doing in OTAs. Now, guys, I wanted to let you know that I haven't uploaded in June so far because, well, I'm trying to fight these copyright claims, so it's been a little bit tough. It's been really hard to stay motivated with the NFL coming after me like this. So if you could take a moment to sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm, just get the content out to a larger audience, and follow me on Instagram for a chance to win a pair of Apple AirPod Maxes. I'm going to announce the giveaway when we hit 400,000 subscribers. And now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? We have been absolutely decimating the Chicago Bears all off season long because the decisions that they've made so far, at least over the past year, have been laughable at best. I feel like they didn't, in my opinion, when you come out in 2017 and say that Mitchell Trubisky is the next coming of Drew Brees, which is what Ryan Pace essentially did, and then put this immense pressure on him to succeed, and in my opinion, punt on him prematurely. Yes, he may have been awful, but I feel like the Chicago Bears really could have at least given him some more support, or at least a bit of a confidence boost in terms of his development. Then you factor in the fact that the Bears just have made some terrible decisions in regards to their roster, such as trading for Nick Foles, which is a quarterback with a pretty decent contract, not anywhere in the higher echelon of what QBs are getting paid, but on top of that, they signed Andy Dalton this past year and called him their starting QB, and you really can't blame me for thinking that, wow, this team is an absolute joke. And that's before I even mention the fact that they let Kendall Fuller go for absolutely nothing. There comes a point where you're just like, Chicago, what are you doing? But I'll tell you guys that I have been pleasantly surprised with the direction of this franchise, and I want to actually applaud ownership for at least attempting to maintain continuity. I think it's very mature of them to at least look at Ryan Pace and say, hey, I think his mindset was in the right place in trying to draft a QB and sign good wide receivers and take from the Andy Reid coaching tree in Kansas City while also trading for Khalil Mack. I understand the mentality there, but things just didn't work out. So I do want to praise the Bears for continuity, but I also want to praise the Bears because I really like the way they went about acquiring their new quarterback, Justin Fields. You see, this is a player that back in January I thought was going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. And the Chicago Bears didn't trade up with the Atlanta Falcons. They didn't trade up with the Cincinnati Bengals. They waited until they felt like they didn't need to give up too many assets in order to move up and draft Justin Fields. So there's a lot of strangeness going on with the Bears. You're still paying 2 quarterbacks that arguably are starter caliber, I suppose. A decent sum of money in the form of Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, but you still have Justin Fields waiting in the wings, who is a very polarizing candidate because, well, apparently since this man went to Ohio State University and Ohio State University never produced a successful quarterback prospect, well, we're automatically assuming that Justin Fields is going to fail. Which, a quick note, I don't think it's fair to assume that Justin Fields is going to fail because Dwayne Haskins was drafted way too high. Cardale Jones, who was drafted in the 4th round, didn't pan out. Terrell Pryor, who was drafted in the supplemental draft but in the 3rd round, didn't pan out. And Troy Smith, who was a 5th round pick, didn't pan out. I never quite understood that rationale whatsoever. I guess you could say, hey, the last QB that was drafted in the 1st round stunk, so there's a chance that Justin Fields may stink, but it's really unfair because I think Justin Fields is probably the most NFL-ready prospect that has come out of Ohio State, at least in the past, I don't know, 40 years? So let me tell you where the Chicago Bears currently are at with Justin Fields' development, because so far, Andy Dalton still has been receiving the first team reps with the Chicago Bears, which in my opinion is a little bit strange, but I guess the Chicago Bears are so traumatized from the Mitchell Trubisky experience, because this is a quarterback that was literally just thrown to the dogs when John Fox thought that his head coaching career was on the line, that Matt Nagy really wants to take his time to develop Justin Fields properly, unless if you see the Chicago Bears start out the season horribly and Matt Nagy begins to panic and does to Justin Fields what John Fox did to Mitchell Trubisky, and then you have a revolving door. But to be honest, I think this is a team that has the potential to surprise a lot of teams this year. And you might make fun of me for this, but I actually think the Chicago Bears have an opportunity to make a pretty nice playoff run if this team fulfills its potential. I see nothing but studs on both the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, especially when you consider who they added this year. They signed Jermaine Ifedi for the right tackle position. They took a flyer on Tevin Jenkins at the left tackle position, which according to Brett Coleman is the most terrifying offensive lineman in the entire NFL draft. They have a very good wide receiver core of Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and Anthony Miller. That's before you bring up the fact that they have David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, and Damian Williams as their running backs. That's before I get to their defense, which in my opinion is better than their offense. You have Eddie Jackson and Tayshaun Gibson at the safety position. You have Desmond Trufant as the right cornerback. You have Jalen Johnson as the left cornerback, and you have Robert Quinn, Danny Trevathan, Roquan Smith, and Khalil Mack that makes up the pass rush and linebacker core. This is a team that can absolutely terrify opposing NFL teams, and this is actually my dark horse team to win the NFC. And bear in mind, I said dark horse because a lot of people aren't hyping up the Chicago Bears. The biggest question mark is how quickly could Justin Fields develop? Well, currently Justin Fields is number 2 on the depth chart, ahead of Nick Foles and right behind Andy Dalton, and Matt Nagy had this to say about him. I've talked to all 3 of our quarterbacks, and as we go into these practices, as we got into training camps, knowing how valuable it is for Justin to get his reps, and then Andy obviously to get his reps too, Nick and I have talked and he understands that going into this, that Justin is going to get the 2 reps and that Nick is going to get the 3 reps. And Nick is a true pro and understands it. He's still very competitive, and that's why I say like in all these meetings. It's just really special to see how they're trying to help Justin out and teach him how to play quarterback and how to watch film and study this offense, but also Justin helping them too with what he sees, so it's been really good. Nagy says that Justin Fields has done a really good job at just trying to digest everything we are teaching in this offense in particular right now. The one thing that you learn when you get with Justin is that you realize that he does everything really well in a group setting. He listens, he observes Andy, Nick, Coach Flip, which is a reference to John DeFilippo, Bill Lazor, myself, and when we are in there, but also too, when you are able to have one-on-one individual conversations with him, sometimes those settings are easier and you could be a little more specific with him. You really see him open up. It'll be cool to see him once he really starts understanding what we do here in this offense, to see him continue to grow and open up and ask good questions, which he has done. Everything that we thought he was going to be when he got here, with learning and being obsessed with everything that we teach him, and then being able to be himself out on the field, he's really doing things in a really good way. Nick Foles has a pretty nice track record in terms of mentorship as well. So it seems like in terms of the culture that the Chicago Bears have, things are starting out in the right way. And based off of what I've seen from Matt Nagy's offensive schemes, his play design isn't what was the problem. It was Mitchell Trubisky making the right reads that was the biggest problem. So I'm really excited to see the development of Justin Fields. And if you made it to the end of this video, I wanted to give you an opportunity to suggest in the comment section down below, who should we cover next? I'm going to pick one of the top comments, so make sure you're voting. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.